There are wealthy families, there are powerful families, and then, there is the Aurelius dynasty. A family so rich their influence stretches across 5 continents. So feared that presidents bend at their name. So broken that their greatest enemy is each other. For 100 years, they controlled everything. Oil in the Middle East, tech in Asia, banks in Europe, media in America, gold in Africa. But beneath their shining empire lies a graveyard of secrets. Secrets that could destroy countries and annihilate the Aurelius bloodline forever. In this video, we uncover the story the world was never meant to hear. A story of betrayal, of forbidden love, of $1 billion murder, and a final heir who must choose: save the family name, or burn the dynasty to the ground. Sit down, turn up your volume, because once this story begins, you will not be able to stop listening. Our story begins not with wealth, but with war. In 1923, a 17-year-old orphan named Luca Aurelius escaped a burning village in Italy. He carried nothing, except the last words of his mother. Power protects, power preserves. He promised himself he would never be powerless again. Luca smuggled himself onto a cargo ship headed for America. He arrived with torn clothes, a broken pair of shoes, and a mind sharper than any blade. For 7 years, he worked at the docks by day, and studied finance by night, stealing discarded newspapers, memorizing stock patterns, learning the language of money without anyone teaching him. People whispered, "That boy will either die poor, or rise beyond every man alive." They were right, just not in the way they expected. When the Great Depression hit in 1929, millions suffered. But Luca saw opportunity in chaos. He began buying dying companies for pennies, resurrecting them, selling them to desperate banks. By 1938, Luca, now 32, was quietly worth $40 million. He was still invisible to the world, but that was his plan. Visibility attracts enemies. Power thrives in the shadows. During World War II, Luca began investing across borders. Oil fields in Saudi Arabia, gold mines in Ghana, shipping lines in Singapore, steel factories in Germany, ports in Brazil. His empire grew, his influence deepened, his enemies increased. But Luca didn't care. He wasn't building wealth, he was building a dynasty. A dynasty meant to last 1,000 years. By 1946, the world had changed. But one thing remained the same. Luca Aurelius was always 5 steps ahead. He married Isabella di Carlo, the daughter of a respected Italian diplomat. But make no mistake, this was not a love story. This was an alliance. They had 3 children: Antonio Aurelius, brilliant, cold, strategic; Selina Aurelius, charming, disciplined, and eerily observant; Marco Aurelius, gentle, artistic, and the only one who inherited Luca's heart instead of his ambition. From the moment they learned to talk, Luca trained them like heirs to a throne. He believed love made people weak. But loyalty made empires last. Every morning the children recited the Aurelius Creed. Family first, family forever, family above all. But even then, the cracks had already begun. Because power doesn't unite families, it tests them. Antonio, the eldest, was everything Luca ever wanted. Confident, feared, calculated. But Marco was the opposite. He preferred painting over politics, books over boardrooms, humanity over control. One night, Luca overheard Marco telling Selina, "I don't want father's empire. I don't want any of it." That single sentence changed the family forever. Because in Luca's mind, there were only 2 kinds of children: those who build the dynasty, and those who threaten it. Antonio seized the moment. He whispered to Luca, "Father, Marco is weak, and weakness destroys empires." That was the first betrayal. A brother turning against his own blood. Not out of hatred, but ambition. Luca didn't punish Marco. No, he did something far worse. He ignored him, and sometimes, being invisible hurts more than being hated. By the 1960s, the Aurelius name was everywhere. In the Middle East, Antonio oversaw oil contracts that reshaped entire regions. He became feared, respected, and dangerously ambitious. In Africa, Selina managed gold operations in Ghana. Unlike her brothers, she led with fairness, earning loyalty instead of fear. In Asia, Luca invested in emerging tech companies in Japan and Singapore. These choices would later make the dynasty untouchable. In Europe, Marco studied literature in France, the only Aurelius living a normal life. But his absence only made him more of a target. Luca had created an empire so vast that no single government could control it. Airlines, banks, mining, media, energy, technology, 5 continents, 1 family, but the stronger the foundation became, the darker the shadows underneath it grew. To solidify his dynasty, Luca arranged political marriages for his children. Antonio married Nadia al-Hariri, a woman from a powerful Middle Eastern family. It wasn't love, it was strategy. Selina married Benjamin Cross, a British financier tied to European royalty. Not passion, partnership, but Marco. Marco refused every marriage proposal Luca arranged. He believed marriage should be chosen, not negotiated, and then something happened that no one in the family saw coming. Marco fell in love. She was an African Ghanaian journalist named Amakusi. Strong, curious, smart enough to see through the Aurelius charm, brave enough to challenge Marco's fears. He loved her with a sincerity uncommon in the Aurelius bloodline. But Luca saw her as a threat, to the dynasty, to the alliances, to the future he built for 60 years. He gave Marco one warning: end it, or leave this family forever. Marco didn't answer, and that silence was enough to seal his fate. In every dynasty, there is one secret so dark, that if exposed, it could destroy everything. For the Aurelius family, that secret was Luca's first child. Long before Isabella, long before the empire, Luca had a son he never acknowledged. A boy born from a relationship in Ghana during his early mining investments. Luca abandoned the mother, abandoned the child, and built his empire as if they never existed. But life has a way of returning unpaid debts. That abandoned son grew into a man. A brilliant, determined man. His name, Kwame Badu. And he knew one truth the world didn't. He was the true firstborn Aurelius. He spent his life gathering information, studying the empire, watching the family from the outside. And now, he was ready to take what he believed was rightfully his. The dynasty didn't know it yet, but Kwame's arrival would ignite a war that would span continents, and tear blood against blood. All right. This is where the tension sharpens, alliances twist, and the seeds of destruction begin to bloom. By the 1970s, the Aurelius Empire was unmatched. But the family, more fragile than ever. Antonio ruled the oil division like a king. Selina controlled the gold and banking arms. Marco, still banished from the core operations, lived quietly with Amma in Paris. Luca believed the dynasty was stronger than ever. But he was wrong, because for the first time in Aurelius history, someone outside the family had begun pulling strings. Kwame Badu, the secret, firstborn. He had money, he had connections, he had motive, but more importantly, he had something no Aurelius ever did: patience. He wasn't coming for revenge. He was coming for the throne. Kwame began quietly, strategically. First, he purchased a failing African mining company, one that Aurelius Gold had been trying to acquire for years. Then, he revived it, expanded it, strengthened it. Within months, he controlled 10% of the gold supply on the continent. Selina noticed. She sent an inquiry to Luca. Luca brushed it off. Small men grow bold when giants sleep. But he didn't know Kwame wasn't acting alone. Kwame had formed a secret alliance with a South American shipping magnate, a Hong Kong tech investor, and an anonymous European banker. Together, they were recreating what Luca built, piece by piece, but outside the family's control. For the first time in decades, the Aurelius dynasty had a rival, and the rival's face looked unmistakably like Luca's. Antonio Aurelius had always been ruthless. But now, his ambition grew, dangerous. He wanted what Luca had never given him: total control. He believed the empire should be ruled by one person, and in his mind, only he was worthy. He started making decisions without informing his father, cutting deals behind the board's back, moving money across borders secretly. Nadia, his wife, noticed the change, but Antonio dismissed her concerns. "This family is at war," he said one night, "and war is not won with softness." Nadia looked at him and whispered, "But it is often lost because of pride." Antonio walked away. He had no time for wisdom, especially when it didn't feed his ambition. Marco and Amma lived happily, quietly, simply. But the Aurelius bloodline never allows peace to last long. One afternoon, Selina arrived unannounced at Marco's apartment in Paris. Marco was shocked. Selina rarely traveled without purpose. Selina sat across from him and said, "Marco, someone is coming for the family. Someone dangerous." Marco dismissed it. "Antonio." Selina shook her head. "No, someone outside the dynasty. Someone who looks like father." For a moment, Marco froze, because he knew exactly what she meant. He had once seen a photograph, hidden in Luca's old study, of a young Ghanaian woman holding a baby boy. Luca had never spoken of it, never explained it, never acknowledged it. Marco had kept that secret for years. But now he realized, that secret child was no longer a child. Selena leaned in and whispered, "His name is Kwame, and he's building an empire of his own." Amma, listening silently, felt a chill run through her. She knew this wasn't just about business. This was blood against blood. The Aurelius family mansion in Italy had a room called the Whispering Wall. A private chamber where Luca held his darkest conversations. It was soundproof, windowless, cold. One night, he summoned Antonio and Selena. Marco, as always, was excluded. Luca looked at his two children and said, "There is a man using my name, using my blood, against us." Antonio clenched his jaw. Selena remained calm. Luca continued, "I buried that past. It should have stayed buried." Antonio spoke first. "Give me the order. I'll end him." Selena shot him a horrified glare. Luca's reply was chilling. "You cannot destroy a shadow by striking blindly." Then he turned to Selena. "You will go to Ghana. Find him, learn his intentions, but do nothing until I say." Selena nodded slowly. Antonio was furious. "Father, why send her? He's a threat to the empire." Luca looked at Antonio with ice in his eyes. "No, Antonio, you are the threat." The room fell silent. For the first time, Antonio understood something terrifying. Luca no longer trusted him. And that would change everything. Selena Aurelius had traveled the world for business. New York, London, Berlin, Dubai. But Ghana was different. This place didn't just hold gold mines and political contracts. It held the past her father tried to erase. Selena arrived quietly. No entourage, no press, no Aurelius insignia. She stayed in a modest guesthouse in Kumasi, near the edge of the market district. She needed answers, and she needed to stay unseen. That night, she visited a small cafe rumored to be owned by someone connected to Kwame. The moment she walked in, conversations died. Eyes lingered. People sensed power. Aurelius' power, even without knowing who she was. A middle-aged woman approached her. "You're looking for him," the woman said softly. Not a question, a truth. Selena swallowed. "Where can I find Kwame Badu?" The woman's expression tightened. "You don't find him, he finds you." As Selena stepped outside, she noticed a black SUV parked across the street. Watching, waiting, she wasn't alone. The next morning, a note appeared under Selena's door. 4 words. "Tonight, Lake Bosamve. Come alone." Selena knew it was risky. But she also knew this might be her only chance to confront the ghost of their bloodline. At sunset, she arrived at the lake. The water glowed gold under the dying light. Silent, still, heavy with meaning, a man stood by the shoreline, tall, poised, eyes sharp as cut glass. Kwame Badu. He turned slowly, and for a moment, Selena felt something strange. He looked like her father. Not exactly, but the same bone structure. The same fire in the eyes. The same intensity that demanded the world bend. Kwame spoke first. "You must be Selena." His voice carried no hostility, only certainty. Selena steadied herself. "You've been interfering with our operations." Kwame smiled faintly. "Your father interfered with my life long before I interfered with your business." Selena took a breath. Why now, after all these years? Kwame's eyes darkened with emotion, not rage, but something older. Pain, abandonment, resolve. "Because the man who erased my existence is getting old. And empires built on lies eventually collapse." Selena felt her chest tighten. Not because of fear, but because somewhere deep inside, she knew he wasn't wrong. Kwame's final words echoed through the fading light. "I'm not here to destroy the Aurelius dynasty. I'm here to take my place in it." While Selena was in Ghana, Antonio Aurelius was building a kingdom of his own. One separate from Luca's control. In Dubai, he met privately with 2 powerful figures. A wealthy shipping mogul from Europe, and an oil baron from the Emirates. Antonio leaned across the table. "My father's era is ending. I will lead the Aurelius dynasty into the future. But I cannot do that alone." The mogul raised an eyebrow. "Are you asking for partnership? Or rebellion?" Antonio didn't flinch. "Both." They made a deal. Off the books, off the network, off the family radar. But alliances born in shadows rarely stay hidden for long. Back in Italy, a quiet figure in the Aurelius mansion overheard something she wasn't meant to. A maid, one who had worked for the family for over 30 years. She didn't understand schedules or contracts. But she understood danger. And she understood something else. Whatever Antonio was planning could destroy the family from within. She had to warn someone. But who? Luca wouldn't listen. Antonio scared her. Marco was gone. Selena was abroad. So she did the only thing she could think of. She went to Amma. Amma had always known Marco came from a powerful family. But she never understood how dangerous that power truly was. When the old housemaid arrived at her Paris apartment, trembling and breathless, Amma felt a knot form in her stomach. The woman spoke in fragments. Antonio, secrets, danger, deals abroad. The family, falling apart. Amma tried to calm her. Slow down. What happened? The maid held Amma's hands tight. Marco is the only one with a heart. He's the only one who can stop what's coming. Amma felt her pulse race. She whispered, "Stop what?" The maid looked at her with sorrow. Antonio isn't waiting for Luca to die. He's speeding it up. Amma's eyes widened. Are you saying? The maid shook her head firmly. Not violence. Something quieter. He's undermining the empire piece by piece. So that when Luca collapses under the weight of it, Antonio becomes the only one left standing. Amma felt cold, because she suddenly understood. This wasn't about business. This wasn't about pride. This was a succession war. A quiet one. A secret one. One that had begun long before she entered Marco's life. And Marco, gentle, peaceful Marco, was walking back into a storm he never wanted. Amma realized she had to tell him. Not tomorrow. Not later. Now. Back in Italy, the empire's center began to weaken. Luca Aurelius, the man who built an empire across continents, was growing frail. For decades, he had been unbreakable, untouchable, relentless. But age is a thief that robs even kings. One night, while reviewing reports, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. He gripped the edge of his desk, breath shallow. He refused to call a doctor. Refused to show weakness. Instead, he whispered to himself. Not yet. They're not ready. Not yet. But empires don't wait for their rulers to recover. And the dynasty he built was already shifting beneath his feet. While Marcus wore the crown of heir and Adrian polished it from the side, another child grew in silence. Alara Aurelius, born to Luca's second wife, a woman the world never met. A woman buried under layers of secrecy. Alara was brilliant, fluent in Mandarin by 7, programming at 9, running small logistics chains across Asia at 12. But genius wasn't her greatest power. It was her invisibility. She wasn't on any family record. No newspapers, no photographs, not even at the Aurelius mansion. Luca's doing. He raised her in Hong Kong, far from Marcus's arrogance and Adrian's hunger. To the world, she didn't exist. To Luca, she was his most dangerous weapon. And to Marcus and Adrian, she would become their greatest nightmare. On Luca's 88th birthday, he summoned all 3 children. The golden heir, the overlooked strategist, and the phantom daughter he never admitted existed. Marcus arrived in a limousine. Adrian arrived with spreadsheets. Alara arrived, on foot. Luca evaluated them with the eyes of a man who built empires. Marcus spoke loudly of expansion. Adrian showed charts of efficiency. Alara asked one quiet question. Father, what is the price of power you're willing to pay? Luca didn't answer, but she saw the flicker in his eyes. The flicker that haunted him for decades. He dismissed the meeting early. No one knew it then. But that night, Luca rewrote his will. And for the first time in his life, he hesitated. The siblings left the estate, each convinced they were winning. Marcus believed bloodline guaranteed destiny. Adrian believed competence guaranteed victory. Alara believed truth guaranteed destruction. Because she alone knew something the others didn't. Their father was dying. The empire would soon fall into someone's hands. Or be torn apart by those fighting for it. Alara watched her brothers leave in their cars, swallowed by the night. She whispered into the wind. This family will burn. And I will not be the one holding the match. Aurelius Global prepared for its biggest move in decades. A merger with Axiom Holdings, worth over $300 billion. The deal would make them untouchable. But someone was working from the shadows to destroy it. Mysterious leaks, secret documents surfacing online, board members being blackmailed, regulatory agencies suddenly investigating. Marcus blamed Adrian. Adrian blamed Marcus. Neither of them suspected the truth. The attack came from outside. And the attacker knew the family too well. Their mother, Isabella Aurelius, the woman Luca betrayed 40 years ago. The woman who vanished from all family photographs. The woman Marcus once asked about as a child. And was told, she never existed. But she did. And she was back. Isabella wasn't the same gentle woman Luca had married decades before. Life had sculpted her into something sharp, cold, and strategic. Across her left cheek ran a thin, pale scar, a reminder of the night Luca ordered her removed from the family. She founded a rival conglomerate in Europe. She built alliances Luca could never predict. And now, she had the power to destroy everything he created. Not by brute force, but by truth. She possessed a document the world had never seen. The first Aurelius crime, the one that started the dynasty. Luca's darkest secret, the secret that could collapse everything. And she intended to reveal it. The Aurelius patriarch, Luca, had survived war, famine, betrayals, coups, scandals, and boardroom assassinations for nearly a century. But on a quiet, windless night, in his private island estate, his body finally began to fail. He lay on silk sheets, surrounded by portraits of a life he built by blood and brilliance. Doctors and guards waited outside. Inside the room, only 3 people were allowed: Marcus, Adrian, Alara, but the air between them was filled with unspoken hatred. Marcus stood like a king waiting for a crown. Adrian stood like a scholar preparing to inherit a library. Alara stood like a shadow watching the sun set. Luca opened his eyes weakly. Luca, power does not belong to those who fight for it, but to those who understand its cost. Marcus leaned in. Adrian held his breath. Alara's hands trembled. Luca, to Marcus, you have strength, but no wisdom. Luca, to Adrian, you have brilliance, but no courage. Then, he turned to Alara. And for the first time in her life, he smiled at her. Luca, softly, in you have the truth. Marcus's face tightened. Adrian's eyes widened. Then Luca whispered something only Alara heard. Do not let the past repeat. 5 minutes later, Luca Aurelius took his last breath. And the empire cracked. In the great hall of the Aurelius estate, lawyers gathered. The siblings sat apart, like 3 nations preparing for war. The room fell silent as the head attorney opened the envelope. Attorney, by the authority of Luca Aurelius, the Aurelius estate shall be divided as follows. Marcus sat up proudly. Adrian clenched his jaw. Alara looked down to hide her shaking. The attorney continued. Item 1. The global financial division goes to Marcus Aurelius. Marcus smirked. Item 2. The technology and logistics division goes to Adrian Aurelius. Adrian's breath released in relief. Then, item 3. The entire offshore reserve, the gold vaults, and all emergency sovereign holdings go to Alara Aurelius. Marcus froze. Adrian's smile faded. The room buzzed, because those emergency sovereign holdings were not small assets. They were the core, the heart of the dynasty, worth more than the entire public company combined. Alara had just been given the true throne. Marcus stood up violently. Marcus, this is impossible. She's not even. Adrian tried to calm him, but Marcus shoved his hand away. Marcus, yelling, she's not one of us. Alara lifted her eyes, calm, but wounded. Alara, father thought otherwise. But Marcus wasn't listening. He stormed out. Adrian followed, silent, calculating. Alara remained seated for a long time, her father's last words echoing in her mind. Do not let the past repeat. Before the family could even process the will, the collapse began. At 5:42 a.m., the international stock markets opened. By 5:45, Aurelius Global shares started falling. By 6 o'clock, they were in free fall. Screens across newsrooms lit up with red. Aurelius Empire collapsing. Historic plunge begins. $89 billion loses value in 18 minutes. Board members panicked. Governments called emergency meetings. Banks began preparing for the worst. But only one person knew the truth. This wasn't a normal market crash. It was a precision strike. A strike orchestrated by someone who had waited decades. Isabella Aurelius, Luca's ex-wife, Marcus's mother, the ghost who had been erased, but never forgot. She triggered a global sell-off using alliances she built in Europe. It was the payback she had saved for 40 years. Marcus was furious. He blamed Adrian. Adrian blamed Marcus. They screamed through the halls of the Aurelius headquarters. Marcus, you leaked the deal information. Adrian, you sabotaged the board. Marcus, you're trying to take everything for yourself. Security guards watched, unsure whom to obey. Meanwhile, Alara entered the boardroom quietly. She placed a folder on the table. Inside were sealed documents written by Luca. Inside were truths the brothers didn't know existed. But before she could reveal them, Marcus swept the folder off the table. Marcus, the throne is mine. I was born for it. Alara quietly. Father disagreed. Marcus. Father is gone. The words hit the room like an explosion. Adrian looked at Alara with a mix of guilt and fear. Marcus walked away, leaving destruction behind him. And Alara realized, the brothers weren't fighting for the throne. They were fighting for identity. For validation. For Luca's approval. Approval he never gave them when he was alive. Back in Luca's study, Alara found something the lawyers had overlooked. A small black envelope sealed with wax. On it, Luca had written only one word. Truth. Inside was a single document. A document that could destroy the entire dynasty. A document that connected Isabella, Luca, the first Aurelius fortune, and a crime committed nearly a century ago. Alara read the first line. Her eyes widened. Her breath stopped. Her hands quivered. Because the truth inside that envelope wasn't simply dangerous. It was catastrophic. What Alara discovered wasn't just a family secret. It was geopolitical. It was criminal. It was the origin of the entire Aurelius Empire. A truth Luca had buried for 70 years. A truth Isabella wanted to expose. A truth Marcus and Adrian would kill to protect. A truth Alara now held in her trembling hands. She whispered, Father, what have you done? Because if this truth reached the world, entire governments would collapse, wars could begin, economies would shatter, and the Aurelius name would be erased forever. Alara had a choice, reveal the truth, or die protecting it, and she had only hours to decide. At sunrise, Marcus Aurelius stood atop the highest floor of Aurelius Global Headquarters, staring down at the collapsing stock markets. To him, the world didn't matter. Empires didn't matter. Laws didn't matter. Only one thing mattered, the throne his father promised him, and then stole from him. He gathered the board members, men and women who feared losing their fortunes. Marcus, I am the eldest son. I am the rightful heir. And I will restore order by any means necessary. Some board members nodded, others looked away, but all of them knew Marcus was not asking. He was declaring. In that moment, Marcus became something dangerous. A leader who believed the world owed him everything, and would burn it down to prove it. While Marcus forced loyalty, Adrian sought power the quiet way. Through alliances, he flew to Zurich under a fake name and met a woman waiting in a darkened conference room. Isabella Aurelius, his mother, but she did not smile. She did not embrace him. She did not even greet him. She only asked, Isabella, do you want to inherit an empire? Or build one of your own? Adrian's voice cracked slightly. Adrian, Marcus won't step aside. And Alara, Isabella, Alara is not your enemy. She is your mirror. The words unsettled him. Isabella slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents capable of dismantling Marcus in minutes. Financial misconduct, hidden debts, illegal acquisitions, leaked personal recordings. Isabella, use these, and the board will turn against your brother overnight. Adrian, and what do you want in return? Isabella, the truth to be exposed. Adrian swallowed, because he knew exactly which truth she meant. The one Alara now held. The one Luca died protecting. The one that could destroy everything. Adrian made his decision. He took the folder, and sealed his fate. Meanwhile, Alara remained in Luca's study, the black envelope trembling in her hand. She opened the rest of the files inside. There were names, dates, transactions, locations, and at the very bottom, a faded photograph from 1947. Young Luca Aurelius, standing beside a burning oil field, with men whose faces were censored. But the caption wasn't, Operation Sovereign Dawn. Alara had no idea what it meant. But one line carved into the document chilled her. This is the debt the family must never repay. A debt, to whom? For what? Why was Isabella trying to expose it? Why did Luca hide it? Alara felt a weight she wasn't ready for. But she also felt something else. A responsibility. She wasn't just a daughter anymore. She was a keeper of the truth. And the truth was a weapon. 3 factions emerged. Faction 1, Marcus, backed by half the board, the family's security forces, the financial division. Marcus believed he would crush his siblings. Faction 2, Adrian, backed secretly by Isabella, Swiss and German investors, data analysts ready to expose Marcus. Adrian planned to remove Marcus legally and surgically. Faction 3, Alara, backed by no board members, no investors, no advisors, just the truth. The truth Luca left her. A truth powerful enough to collapse all 3 factions. All 3 siblings prepared for war. But none of them understood the battlefield. Because the real war wasn't for the company. It was for the legacy. The name, The truth buried beneath it. Marcus saw Alara as the biggest threat. She held the sovereign reserves. She held Luca's private files. She held the one thing Marcus feared: legitimacy. So Marcus made a ruthless decision. He ordered the family's elite security unit, men who used to protect presidents, to retrieve Alara. Not kill her, not harm her, just control her. Because if Marcus could control Alara, he could control the empire. But he underestimated something. Alara had the one resource Marcus and Adrian never valued: loyalty. Not from guards, not from lawyers, not from board members, from people her father overlooked. Housekeepers, drivers, archivists, quiet staff who saw everything, and were invisible, just like she once was. When Marcus's men arrived to take Alara, they found her gone, escaped minutes earlier, helped by the very people Marcus never bothered to see. Marcus thought he had outplayed everyone. But as he prepared for a press conference to declare himself the new Aurelius Patriarch, Adrian struck. He hired a private security unit from Geneva, off the books, untraceable, and they executed a precise operation. They intercepted Marcus's convoy, disabled the communication signals, and extracted him. Marcus Aurelius was officially missing. The world didn't know yet, but the family did, and panic surged through the halls of Aurelius Global. Adrian had just done the unthinkable. He had moved against his own brother. But Adrian didn't see it as betrayal. He saw it as balance. Adrian, you taught me to be invisible, Marcus. Now you will see how dangerous invisibility can be. With Marcus contained and Alara on the run, Isabella Aurelius saw her moment. She prepared to reveal the truth at an international press conference. Not the scandal of a greedy billionaire. Not a corporate crime, but the origin of the Aurelius dynasty. The truth behind Operation Sovereign Dawn. A truth that would shatter governments, economies, alliances. A truth the world was never meant to hear. She stood before the cameras. Microphones pointed toward her. The world watching. She opened her mouth. And then everything went dark. Lights cut out. Feeds shut down. Security froze. Because someone had beaten Isabella to the truth. Someone who had access to Luca's deepest vaults. Someone who had the original documents. Someone who had nothing to lose. Alara. Alara stood on a balcony overlooking the city lights of Geneva. In her hands, she held the original documents of Operation Sovereign Dawn, Luca's most guarded secret. Her phone vibrated. A single message from an unknown number. Do you know what you hold? One wrong move and the world will burn. Alara knew exactly who it was. Marcus. Even from captivity, he was already trying to manipulate fear. But she wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Because she realized something no one else understood. Truth is the only power stronger than money, blood, or influence. She whispered to herself, Father, I will not repeat your mistakes. I will end this. Marcus had been captured, held in a remote villa under tight security. But he was Marcus Aurelius. Born to control, born to survive. He didn't fight physically, he fought mentally. He studied the guards' shifts, the security cams, the weak spots in every lock. After 3 nights, he executed a flawless escape. Slipping out under the cover of fog, he vanished. His first thought, Alara. She had humiliated him, held the empire's leverage, and threatened everything he believed he deserved. Marcus vowed, she will pay for this. I will take back everything. Even if I burn the dynasty to ashes. Meanwhile, Adrian had spent the last 24 hours orchestrating a perfect plan. Or so he thought. He had allied with Isabella. He had tried to outmaneuver Marcus. He had thought he controlled the outcome. But as the truth of Luca's Operation Sovereign Dawn emerged, Adrian realized he had been a pawn. The operation was not just a family scandal, it was a global conspiracy. Luca had built the dynasty on a secret that influenced governments, banks, and even the oil market decades before anyone knew. And now, the papers Alara held revealed not just the family's origin, but decisions that could topple nations. Adrian understood, finally, he wasn't saving the dynasty. He was watching it die, and powerless to stop it. Alara stepped onto the stage of a global financial forum. The world had been expecting Isabella. Instead, the last heir appeared. She held the envelope, the documents, and a laser focus that silenced the crowd. Alara, ladies and gentlemen, you have trusted an empire built on lies. Founded by a man who sought power at the cost of humanity. Operation Sovereign Dawn, the foundation of Aurelius Global, was built on greed, deception, and a secret you were never meant to know. The crowd murmured. Cameras flashed. World leaders gasped. She revealed the documents, financial manipulations, hidden accounts, and a centuries-old crime that had allowed the Aurelius dynasty to flourish. And then she looked directly at Marcus and Adrian, who were watching from behind a black curtain. Alara, your father built a throne on lies. I will not inherit it. I will destroy it, and from its ashes, a new empire will rise. Not on fear, not on blood, not on secrets, but on truth. The markets collapsed instantly. Aurelius Global shares plummeted. Governments froze. Banks shut down. The empire Luca built across 5 continents began crumbling in real time. Marcus was furious. He tried to manipulate the board, the media, even the guards. Nothing worked. Adrian realized too late that the world no longer obeyed Aurelius' commands. Every ally he had made was now neutralized by the truth. Alara watched it all quietly. She didn't celebrate. She didn't smile. Because destruction was only the first step. The empire was gone. The dynasty fractured. But she now had something more important. The power of truth. Alara returned to Luca's private study one last time. The walls were filled with portraits of those who had come before. Men and women who built fortunes and empires. Betrayers, lovers, loyalists, ghosts of her family. She whispered to the room, I could rebuild this empire. I could restore it to its former glory. But I will not. I will do better. I will choose the path my father never could. Not ambition, not power, not fear, truth. The city outside was quiet. The markets were in chaos. But inside, a new dynasty was born. One not of wealth, but of integrity. Years later, the world remembered the fall of Aurelius Global. The story of Marcus, Adrian, and Alara became legend. Marcus vanished, a cautionary tale of ambition unchecked. Adrian retired, haunted by the realization he was never the master of his fate. Alara disappeared from public life, working quietly to rebuild initiatives for fairness, transparency, and ethical business. The empire Luca built, gone. The dynasty of lies, erased. But one lesson endured: no fortune, no empire, no legacy, is stronger than truth. The Aurelius name survived, not in money, not in power, but in memory, and in the hard-won wisdom of one last heir.